Welcome to Women's Health Unwrapped with Nicola Farndell, a weekly show dedicated to empowering women to unlock the secrets of true health and vitality. Join us as we unwrap what healthy living really means with guest experts and real-life stories to help you get clear on the power of building sustainable, healthy habits without the overwhelm and confusion you feel right now. It's time to strip back and lay out the truth about why taking better care of yourself is the answer to the happy, vibrant life you're striving so hard to create. Hi and welcome to today's new episode of Women's Health Unwrapped. I'm so happy to have you here joining with a very special guest with, I think, what is going to be a really interesting conversation. It's certainly something that I'm pretty fascinated in and would love to know more about. So I hope you're going to take a lot from it too. I'm joined by guest Amber Harrison, who is a trauma therapist and a psychotherapist. And Amber's going to talk about how she blends together the science and the spiritual side of things to help women heal their hearts. And that's the bit we're going to really explore, is that healing piece. Now, if you have experienced trauma and listening to some of what Amber might talk about, specifically with our own story of trauma, and you think this is going to trigger you, then maybe you might want to skip this episode. But just to put that out there and make you aware of some of what we're going to talk about today. So, welcome to the podcast, Amber.
Thank you very much, Nicola. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and as I said, I am personally really excited about this. You and I had chatted a while ago, and it's just such an interesting topic and also a completely different lens to look through when you think about improving your health and well-being and happiness, which ultimately is what it's all about, isn't it? So
absolutely.
To kick us off, I just want to ask you what your most impactful healthy habit is that you have in your own toolkit.
So thank you. Great question. So my healthy habit is 7-11 breathing, which sounds a little bit weird, doesn't it? But it's a breathing technique. And I didn't realise how badly I was breathing until, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. So I was breathing from up here. And I'd had asthma since I was about 7, and you know, very, very, very shallow breathing. So it was very easy for me to get panicky because I breathed from my chest up here. So when I learnt this technique, 7-11 breathing, it was like literally a breath of fresh air. So you breathe like you do when you're a baby. Whereas we grow up, as we go from kind of childhood to adulthood, we feel our tension, our anxiety up here. So we forget to breathe properly. And when we forget to breathe properly, we don't actually ever relax our bodies, ever. So 7-11 breathing is a technique to actually relax your body. It stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system. So that's the bits in your body that goes, let's relax. It's a beautiful thing to do. So you do it. So you put one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly, and you breathe in to a count of 7 through your nose, but you're filling up your belly, not your chest. So the reason why you put your hand on your chest is to make sure it doesn't move. So we're breathing through our nose for 7, and then you're going to breathe out through your mouth with a count of 11. So a longer out breath. So you're going to fill up your tummy with your breath, and then you're going to push out all that air from your tummy on the 11. And the longer breath out is the bit that stimulates that relaxation. Okay, so we'll just do a couple of them and then you can try it. Okay, so in for 7. And then out for 11. We'll do one more in for 7. And then out for 11. Okay, so that's called 7-11 breathing. Now, the way to practice it is when you're going to sleep, if you've never done it before. So you're lying in bed and you can really feel your belly going up and down there. Do it for 20 minutes for about 12 weeks, which is probably going to shock a lot of people but it takes that long. It's really difficult to learn how to do this because you're changing your body's, the way it's been breathing for however old you are now, 20, 30, 40 years. So it takes a long time to change it. And you really, really need to do it for that long, for that 20 minutes to feel the benefit of it. But now I can do the 7-11 breathing, and in under 30 seconds, my body knows exactly what to do. And it just goes. So you can use it if you're in a queue, before an interview, before a podcast, whatever you like, really. Whenever you feel your anxiety levels coming up and you just want to just relax yourself, do that 7-11 breathing. You can do it anywhere. Nobody knows you're doing it. It's just great.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
that's my top tip,
fabulous.
my top
Love
habit.
that. And there's so many different breathing techniques that you can use. That's a really good one, actually. The 7-Eleven. I'm sure it's the name of a shop in the US, I think, isn't it? 7-Eleven.
Is it? It might be, yeah.
So I think it's an easy one to remember. But there's so much out there now about breathing and how, as you said, as humans, we've forgotten how to breathe correctly because we are often stuck without realizing it in that fight or flight state. And our breathing is very shallow, very much from our chest. And as you say, that's exasperating the anxiety and stress and feeling of fear even more, isn't it? So yeah, that's one that maybe, as you say, someone could even just begin to practice it when they are in those little moments of, I'm a bit stressed driving, or I've got a meeting to go into at work, and then try to bring it in to do with bedtime to help relax. So brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's great. Good luck with it.
Yeah. So I'd love to start with hearing a bit about your story, Amber, because you've got quite a lot in your backstory that has led you to where you are today with this understanding of the spiritual side, because academically your background is science. You're someone who's been working in the field of the mind and helping people with their mental health and so on. So yeah, share a bit about that story to help people set the scene for where we're going to go with healing your heart.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Yeah. So I grew up really as a bit of a wild child in the countryside in Yorkshire. My parents were renovating a barn, so we would travel from where we were living in the town out to this barn, and I could just roam wherever I wanted the whole weekend. It was just amazing. So I had a real free spirit. And but then my parents didn't work out, so my parents got divorced. And we moved, my mum got remarried, and we moved a very long way away. So we went from Yorkshire to Hertfordshire. And it was a completely different thing for me, that. So I did my secondary school years, I started in Hertfordshire, in a city near London. No kind of, I couldn't ramble out into the fields anymore because it wasn't accessible. There were parks and things, but I felt a total and utter disconnection to myself. And I got very, very lost very quickly. And I turned to everything else kind of outside me, really, for solace. And that was anything from, a lot of people pleasing and a lot to do with dating boys as well. So, I thought if I can get love from somebody else, then I'll be okay. So it was a very much, Prince Charming. I was looking for a Prince Charming, somebody to save me, that sort of fairy tale idea. And I was in my head a lot. I had asthma a lot as a child, so there was a lot of pain there. But I started smoking because I thought that would be cool and I would fit in with other people. So there was a lot of things going on, really. I was bullied at secondary school. I had a northern accent when I moved down to Hertfordshire, and I was really bullied for it. So I got rid of it. So I feel really appalled that I've done that to myself. But that's what I did at the time to fit in. I did anything I could to fit in. But I didn't realise quite how damaging that was for me. So moving kind of, from school into my work, I sort of did admin for a while and didn't really enjoy it. Had a relationship that failed again, and I had a chance for a reset in my mid-20s. So I went to uni, which I hadn't done when I was 18. I just didn't want any more education. I associated that with bullying in a bad place. But this time was different because I thought, I can actually go and do what I want to do. So I went off and I did psychology and anthropology. Absolutely loved it. And my soul just loved the anthropology in particular because it was all about shamanism and wow, and illness and medicine and art and all these different cultures, and it was vibrant and it was rich, and my soul loved it. And the psychology side of it, well, my mind loved that. It was like, oh, there's all these kind of logical things, and it could grab things, and it could feel safe in the, rooted in these reports and the kind of the routine and the testing, all that sort of side of it. So I had this incredible degree that got both sides of a coin, really, for me. And then when I left university, the side of me that won the battle was the mind, not my soul. My mind needed to keep me safe. And it was too unsafe doing shamanism. That's where my soul wanted to take me, but that was irrational to my mind. It said, no, you won't be able to get a mortgage with that. You won't be able to get a job. There's no way you can do that. Nobody will be able to, understand that. You won't be able to find, you won't be able to get married. I mean, all these ridiculous things that my mind was telling me. So I didn't. So I fell back into admin again, and fell into another abusive relationship. Ended up having 2 abusive relationships, major ones, and children by both of them. Ended up as a single mum, not once but twice. And then I when I was fleeing the middle of the night from my second abusive relationship with these 2 children in tow, I had a real dark night of the soul episode then. My soul said, no, we need to do something different here. And it showed me human given psychotherapy. And I spent the next year, so having these 2 little children, traveling from where I was living in Shropshire down to London for that year, lots of day trips down. So getting up at 4:30 in the morning, getting a train at 5 to London to retrain as a psychotherapist. And it was incredible. I learned the reason why my mind was just telling me, you mustn't do that. You must keep safe. I understood it all came out. So that was all my scientific side. And my brain loved it because there was suddenly these answers to why I was people pleasing. Why was I doing that? Well, because we have this ancient reptilian brain and this limbic system at the bottom of our brain here that everything else is built upon. So we come all the way through our evolution to our thinking brain here, where we can, there's the logic and the thought and the observing self here. But the thing that gets us going first is this limbic system. So it doesn't matter how much you think about this consciously, your mind, this limbic system is just going to override everything if it thinks that we're being threatened. Wow, how simple was that? But it was really revolutionary for me, that. Yeah. So then it changed my thinking, that did. But not enough. I still kept making the mistakes I was making. I still couldn't follow my heart. I still fell back into admin. I didn't feel able to make that leap to self-employment with the psychotherapy because it was still too scary. And what I was missing was the access to my subconscious mind. So consciously I knew all of this. I'd learned it all this science, it all made sense, it backed up, all the research did. But subconsciously, which was my 95% of my mind that I can't access consciously, that was the one that was ruling. And I couldn't actually get to the pain and the grief and the hurt that was pushing my limbic system to keep me safe. 2020, which was a horrendous year for many, many people, I found it very mixed. The summer of 2020 was a beautiful place for me because I live in a Welsh valley. So it was suddenly just a chorus of beautiful sounds from nature and the birds, and it was just incredible. There was no train, planes going overhead. There was no traffic. There was nothing. It was just still and quiet. So it was a beautiful place for us to be. But a very difficult time for me because my daughter turned 18, I turned 50, and she had a suicide attempt in the October. And this was after years of self-harming and struggling. And it obviously, she's here, she's well, but it completely and utterly took the bottom out of both of our worlds, that did, and we had to rebuild. And we rebuilt separately, but doing the same thing. At that point, I had nothing in my life that I could cling on to that was solid, that there was a connection for me. There was something bigger than me. I didn't have that. Everything I was doing was from my mind, was from science. I hadn't gone down the spiritual route at all at this point. I really pushed it away. It didn't feel safe. But at this point, I had no choice but to do that because there wasn't anything else to lean on. I was terrified, Nicola. What would I have done if I'd lost my daughter? How would I have possibly kept going with my life? I didn't have a reason, a purpose. I couldn't make sense of it. And there was this enormous screaming, and I couldn't tell where it was coming from, but it was my ancestors, all the women in my previous lineage who were all saying, you've got to change now, you've got to do something different. What are you going to do? And these voices kind of surrounded me and pushed me to having a connection to that something bigger than me. So a spiritual connection. And they forced me to kind of go and find have some Reiki. I found my oracle cards. I had a tarot reading. I had a massage. I felt a big weight lift from me because I was no longer being pushed by this safety net that my mind was trying to create around me, but there was something bigger that was holding me, much bigger than my mind, much bigger than keeping me safe and not doing anything. But this connection to source or universe, whatever you want to call it, nature is what I call it, is, I'm part of something bigger. So I now trust in myself and in my own intuition that no matter what is thrown at me, I know I'm going to be okay. And I've coupled that with all the stuff that I know about psychotherapy, put it all together. Then I trained in heart healing last year, and that was all the missing pieces that slotted into the puzzle. There was always something missing, always, from my psychotherapy training, and it was the spiritual bit. That was the bit that needed to drop in. So this heart healing that I retrained in last year, we as practitioners had to have heart healing ourselves as well. Which was incredible because all this stuff came up, decades, 40 years of pain I'd carried, gone in an hour. It's just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So in terms of transformation, I had the most fundamental transformation at a soul level and a heart level. So my heart, all the trauma that it had held, all those memories of trauma from when I was a child, they were able to be healed and released. And that what I now offer, my clients, is heart healing as part of my package. It's an incredible modality. And it heals all sorts of wounds. So, part of what my mission is, Nicola, is to heal the sisterhood wound, because I was bullied at school by these 6 girls who knew no better, because they were like 11, 12, 13. They had wounds of their own, but I really felt those in my heart. And it's pushed me away from reaching out to women and understanding that there's that whole and utter beautiful community of support and love. And I missed out on that. I instead went through abusive relationships, was very isolated, and I was, told I was stupid, and all sorts of things happened. And I didn't reach out to these glorious women that are around. So part of what I also do now is I work really hard to help women to feel safe within themselves, but also with other women, because we're all there to champion each other. And that's what I'm trying to do, is trying to get women to, look after each other and to come back into that community that we've all lost.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And yeah, there's so much now I want to dive into. I think the first thing is let's literally break apart the healing your heart piece. That sounds big, and it maybe sounds fluffy, for someone who's new to this. Like, what exactly does that mean when you use that term and you say, I'm now trained and qualified and help people to heal their heart?
So when we experience something traumatic, so we could experience trauma with a big T, which are things like abuse, or our parents' divorce, for instance, when we're little, or a little T trauma. So, for instance, a little T trauma, good example. When I was young, my younger sister's birthday is 4 days before mine. So we would always get the same presents. So I would always know 4 days before my birthday what I was going to have. So I would see her unwrap it, and she would have the excitement knowing, of not knowing what the present was going to be. Whereas I was then left to wait 4 days to unwrap the same present. Wow. And I found that unbelievably painful. It sort of didn't mark my birthday. I felt, that it just completely traumatized me. But it was a little T trauma, because I don't think anybody really understood how difficult that was for me, and I certainly couldn't express it as a child. It was just something that I felt really deeply and felt in my heart. So the heart healing is the understanding that the root cause of trauma, be that big trauma or little trauma, is to do with this relationship that we have with the person who created that wound. So, for me, for instance, with that, getting the same present from my parents as my sister, that really hurt me, because I didn't feel that I was special enough to have something different to my sister, and that somehow she was more important because her birthday was before mine. Now, they didn't understand that that's what they were doing to me. They thought they were being fair, I'm sure. But for me as a child, that was really deep rooted for me, and that hurt my heart. And I've held that as a wound in my heart as I've gone through my life, because I didn't understand that as a child. I've taken this as pain in my heart. I've held that pain all the way through. So I felt not good enough for the whole of my life within my heart. And that's come out in relationships for me, choosing, not good men, because I didn't feel good enough to pick a good partner. I've not gone for the career that I could have gone for because I didn't feel good enough for doing that, even though I've got a degree in psychology and I'm a trained psychotherapist. I still didn't feel good enough to do that. And that's because of that, how I felt through that experience. Not because of the experience itself, which is what a lot of transformation therapy does, but because of how I felt, that relationship wound in there. And our heart talks to our mind. It's not the other way around. Our heart is the one that does the first talking before our mind does. So when we can connect to that, when we can heal the wounds of the heart, then we can free the mind from everything that's been holding us back.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, and this is something that most people don't have any awareness of. It's very uncommon, isn't it, for the general public to know about how your mind works. That, as you said, 95% of your mind is the subconscious mind, which is essentially the programmed mind. It's what's being put in there mainly from when you're a very young child and as we're developing and so on. And that is determining your thoughts, your feelings, emotions, and then your actions, which in turn create your reality. And as you said, you ended up choosing one after the other, abusive partners, people who basically reconfirmed the belief you had that you weren't good enough. But you didn't know you were doing that. And actually, that is a very common thing for lots of women with relationships, isn't it? Is that they choose relationships that aren't positive, healthy, use the word normal relationships. They're reenacting things that have happened. Maybe it might have been some kind of abuse or difficult relationship with their father or another male family member, or something else, as you say, that's impacted you that you're possibly not aware of at all. And that's the science, but that is human evolution, biology, isn't it? That's how we are just developed, and how our brain and the mind, which is the thinking part of the brain, works. But then, as you say, you have that heart piece, in that, yes, those things have happened, which determine the program that's running in your mind and your brain and how that acts out. But you have this huge emotional piece to it as well, that is, impacting as you say, they're both connected. It's like a two-way street. And that healing piece is something which I think, from when we spoke, and what I know, is often missed. People can do that inner work with a coach. They can work through their beliefs and maybe have therapy to go through some of the trauma side of what's happened. And, and they can start to think about, oh, well, yeah, that was said as when I was a child, or that was done, or I had this incident and that's led to this. And maybe, then that awareness starts to help you create a new set of beliefs, which is very hard to do, because you have to consciously work on that to reprogram and change those old beliefs to the new story and beliefs. But then that hard piece is often still there, isn't it? You've still got
Absolutely.
the emotional hurt. And that example you've given about the birthday presents is a really good one, that I think will trigger people to think about, maybe their own story and way that they are. And I've done a lot of stuff like this, not just through the coaching, but back in my corporate life, I worked with a business psychologist individually for me and my development, but also we would use her in team situations and so on. And I just loved it because, there's so much that could be like things you never ever think about, or you don't piece together, that seems so inconsequential in your life, but actually they're things that could be huge. Could be a comment that a teacher once made to you at the age of, I don't know, 9, about, oh God, you're not very good at using your imagination to create stories. Joe over there does brilliant stories, and there's dragons and unicorns, and it could be something that a teacher thinks is fun, and but then for you that might mean you think you've got no imagination, and how that can play out is then a whole web of what that could lead to. So it's just so fascinating, and I think with yourself, when you start to do that mind piece, when you got more knowledge on the psychotherapy and the science piece, and you use that to have more self-awareness, how did you know that things still weren't right? Like, how was that playing out in real life with your health and well-being?
Well, it's a great question, because you'd think, wouldn't you, by this point, that I would know what was going on and that I would be healed. But there's no, we're always on a healing journey, aren't we, Nicola? There's never an end to that. We're here to learn from our lessons, and if we don't learn from them, they'll keep being repeated until we do. But part of the healing, when we lose people that we love, or we lose a pet, we hold that in our hearts, don't we? It's an energetic trauma that's held there, and it needs healing. It's been proven with research recently that you do need paracetamol when you break up a loving relationship, because you do actually feel it in your heart. It actually is a real pain in your heart. So we talk about heartache. It has been proven that it does hurt. So for that 6 weeks, take paracetamol, give yourself a break, because it is painful for you, for your heart. So there's a lot of research around the heart in the last few years that's really taken things, we've really pushed the kind of scientific and the spirituality aspects together. And I think because of COVID, we've moved into this intuitive age, haven't we, from the kind of information age, and people are looking for something bigger, a different connection now, particularly women, because we are that intuitive. We do trust ourselves, when we can go back inside ourselves and really sit quietly, attune into your heart. It talks. Your heart talks to you all the time. It's very quiet, so you have to be very still to hear it. But it always tells you what you need, always, every single time. And I think that's a big thing I used to do when I was a child. That was me going out into nature, sitting quietly by a river, or going off on my bike, and flying down a lane, with my hair streaming out the back, and it was just glorious being connected to something bigger than me, where I could hear what my heart was wanting to talk to me about, what my soul was wanting to talk to me about. So that was a beautiful thing for me. And I didn't find that bit that was missing until I did that heart healing training last year. It was always the missing bit. So every time I had different form of psychotherapy, every time I had a massage, every time I spoke to somebody else, every time I had an affirmation, none of it was getting absolutely to the depth that I needed. And I am somebody that does soul searching. That is me. It's something I'm very interested in that. So I know that, for some people listening to this, Nicola, perhaps they're going to be thinking, there's no way I'm going there, because this is too deep. I'm too scared of what I might find if I go into my subconscious too much. But heart healing it's safe, it's non-invasive, it's a very beautiful space to be held in, to heal these bits of you that have been so wounded for so long, because those wounds are from when we were little children, when we didn't have the emotional intelligence to be able to understand what that parent, that caregiver, that peer, whatever was trying to say to us. And it doesn't always have to be, like my example of the trauma. I didn't know that was a traumatic experience consciously. I didn't understand that. I knew it hurt me, but I didn't know the depths that had gone to, and how much that had affected me all the way through my life. And that's just one thing. So really, as heart healers, we are aware that, I would say, everybody we help feels not enough at some level. That will have happened to everybody because of that attachment that we had to our parent, our caregivers. If they do their best. This is not about blaming your mother, your father, your adoptive parents. It's not about blaming anybody, because they did the best they could, unless obviously it was an abusive parent, and that's completely different. But we as adults, as parents, we do the best we can for our children, but we do it from the place that we're at that time. So if we still carry those wounds in our hearts, we're going to find it very difficult, to pass on, the gentleness and the beautifulness that we need to do to, give our children the best start that they can have in life.
Yeah. So I think it feels like it's quite obvious from what you're saying that this kind of work is going to have a big emotional relief and bring maybe a sense of calm, acceptance, peace, self-compassion, perhaps a lot of those things. What is it going to benefit in terms of your overall health and well-being, especially thinking about more of that physical piece? And how we know physical and mental health is one. It's completely tied together, as we're talking about here. Our mind and body are connected. But kind of how is that going to impact, this midlife woman who has hopefully 40, 50 more years left of her life? Many of those are going to be post-menopause as well, when we know physiologically a lot of things have changed. So what would you gain, and how do you, feel in your life because of that extra piece of the puzzle you've now slotted in with the heart healing?
Well, I'm postmenopausal now, so I'm 53, 54 soon. I've been through that. My journey took about 10 years or so to go through that, the perimenopause all the way through. And it was a very difficult journey. But the last year since I've had the heart healing, I have slowed down. I've been very gentle on myself. I've gone into being rather than doing. I think up to a year ago, I was very much in the doing mode, the masculine, and it was almost running. If I look back at it now, it was running away from everything to do with me. It was because I was so disconnected from myself and so scared that I just had to keep doing, because if I stopped, what would happen? Would it all fall apart? Would I fall apart? Who's going to pick up the pieces? What's going to happen to me? Since I've done the heart healing, and I now know that I am good enough. I'm worthy. I can trust myself. I've accepted who I am. I feel love for myself and I feel compassion for myself. Now I honor myself. I'm aware in all of my physical form, my emotional form, my spiritual form, my mental form now, when things are off. And you do know, don't you, when things are off, but it really, sometimes you can keep going and pushing yourself way beyond what you think is off, to the point where, you are actually on self-destruct mode. I don't do that anymore. I'm aware when there's just a little bit off, so I take time out, whatever that time out, might be at that point. For me, generally, when I need a time out, I've got it's because I've heard my heart. My heart has said, had enough today. You need to stop. You need to regather some energy because there's too much going on. It's an honouring that then I can then put in boundaries with other people. I can say, I can't do this. I thought I could, but I can't. So I can say it with compassion for myself, but compassion for other people as well, because I'm not giving my best to other people anymore. So it's that moving into that. It's not necessarily to do with my age, although part of it probably is that wisdom that you get when you move into your later years. But it's more because I've done heart healing with women in their 30s, and in their 20s, and it's the relief that you get when you know that you are good enough just as you are. That there isn't something missing anymore. That you're not searching for something. You accept where you're at, and you do the best that you can, but you know that you're going to get it wrong, and you don't beat yourself up about it. You learn from it, and you reflect on it well, and the wisdom that comes from being able to trust yourself and believe in yourself and listen to those whisperings of your heart and your soul is immense. It's just immense. That calmness that you get.
And the thing I do is about helping women to build their self-worth and self-belief, because when you know you are worthy, when you value yourself, you are going to make choices in life to protect your health. to live a strong, long, full life, aren't you? And so
Mm,
that
mm,
piece you're talking about with the awareness, the acceptance, the compassion, all of that is leading to you then making choices, as you've just given in your example of putting some boundaries in place, saying no to things that feel too much, other things that might be moving your body, getting outside, socializing, being part of a community, making a choice to have a hobby perhaps that fills you up because you have that awareness, and you know you are worth doing those things for. And so that's the
yeah,
ultimate piece of what I do, is helping people to know their value, because then that self-care, that protecting your long-term health, that being proactive about it isn't something you keep putting off and then it becomes too late. It's like, actually, no, that matters because I matter. And so
yeah.
I love how you've explained that. I think that comes together all so nicely. um
Thank you.
so to kind of wrap everything up that we've talked about, I would love you to try, I know it's going to be difficult, but to think about 3 small things someone could do if they aren't working with someone like yourself, but they're hearing this and thinking, yeah, I can take some of this on board. I guess it's the whole mind, heart, peace, awareness, and take some steps, because I'm all about building new habits. What could somebody do on their own in just 3 simple steps to try and build some better habits to perhaps focus on this part of their health journey?
Yeah, well, I suppose I think probably the first one would be the 7-11 breathing that we discussed at the beginning. That's a that is an incredible life set for anybody, and it's you can put that in your toolkit really easily, and that just goes with you. You can do that whenever, and nobody knows. I think that was the thing that was really a turning point for me learning about 7-11 breathing. It's a quiet thing; it doesn't have to be obvious. You don't have to then say to your partner, "I just need some time out to breathe," or you can do it yourself without anybody knowing. And
Yeah.
sometimes when you're when you're putting changes into your life, you don't want them to be too obvious. So that's a really nice one to do. Um, Another one I would do is I would recommend getting a little bottle of flower remedies. So the one called Rescue Remedy, back flower remedy. When you have any sort of anxiety, fear, block about doing anything, if you have that little bottle of Rescue Remedy with you, it just gives you, your body and your soul, that little lift it needs to be able to face it. I've used it. A couple of
I've
years
used
ago.
it, yeah. I
Yeah,
used to carry
I
the
use it a lot.
spray.
Yeah, yeah, use it a lot. But I used it really funnily. We had a
Mm.
rope swing in lockdown up the valley. Somebody put a rope swing on the, tree. It was incredible. So you just whooshed out right into the valley, and one day I went on it and it broke. So I just went bush like that straight down to the ground. Luckily, didn't damage myself, but I really shocked myself. It was about a 10-15 minute walk home. So I came home, had the Rescue Remedy, and I felt I honoured what I needed to do. I just sat down and I was quiet the rest of the evening. Um, and I has suffered no bruising from it, nothing at all. I just woke up the next morning and I was completely fine. And I'd hit my coccyx. I'd,
Mm.
really had bashed myself quite hard. So it's a beautiful thing because it just relaxed me, rebalanced me, calmed me down, and helped my body and my soul and my mind deal with the shock of what had happened. So that would be my second one, flower remedy. My third one would be start looking into oracle cards, which is a bit out there, isn't it? This one really, a bit woo, but it's when you start using oracle cards every day, you start tapping into your intuition and your self-awareness. It grows exponentially every day, to a point where you will absolutely trust and believe in your decisions. So I would start using oracle cards, loads of them on the internet. Look at the ones that you really like the imagery of, because those are the ones, because you're going to look at these a lot. Yeah, working with them every day. Get your journal out, journal on what you see, the colors, in the pictures, the age of the person, if there's people, the shapes, the animals, and just start writing about how you feel about the look of the cards. Then you can look in the little book that comes with it, and you can read about the theme, see if journal a bit about that. but that develops your intuition and develops your sense of self, which is absolutely crucial when you are moving through the phases of your life, so that you understand who you are, how you react to things. Then you can build better boundaries, you can be clearer with other people, you can be compassionate to them, to yourself. It's great practice.
You've literally sold me on that. So I'm going to ask Amber when we wrap up for a recommendation of where to look. I think that's a brilliant idea, because journaling in itself is proven to be so beneficial, and it's something I've dipped in and out of. I haven't successfully built a consistent habit with, but I really like what you've suggested there about using the cards as a prompt, because many of us do struggle with journaling because you have this blank page and think, well, what do I write? And often, and this isn't a bad thing, actually, this can be very helpful, it just becomes a bit of a mourning notebook, and you just spew out all of the crap that's going on, which, as I say, can be helpful, and it's part of what journaling's about. But sometimes you feel as though, I don't know if I want more from this. And I love what you've said there about just being with your intuition. And we could have a whole other episode on this, because you're right, as women, we are very intuitive. There is this whole connection to the moon and to the tides and everything. So that's brilliant. And I think that's something that actually could be quite fun. You say, get a nice pack of cards, and then you enjoy opening each day. So brilliant. Thank you for that, Amber.
You're welcome.
And
a whole drawer full of them now.
Oh, have you?
If I collect them, they're lovely.
I mean, I love stuff like this. And many years ago, I've been on my whole personal journey of transformation, and I was desperately seeking a fix for my problems, etc. And I tried so many things. This is going back, starting from really 24, 25 years ago. Actually, no, even longer, because I was 19, like 29 years ago. And, I tried the spiritual church, I tried tarot card. I love all of that kind of thing. I've had my cards and fortune read. I've been lucky enough to have it done in New Orleans and in New York, and I'm really into that kind of thing as well. So I've often thought, I think as I get older and have hopefully the luxury of more time, it's something I can explore a bit more. So I'll share
5 minutes, Nicola. 5 minutes a day. That's all you need for a card.
Brilliant.
It doesn't need to be long. Just you can. Some of the card decks have a question on them. When you look in the theme, just a really easy question every day is, what do I need to know right now?
Yeah.
That's all you need to ask. What do I need to know right now? And the card will be, you'll pull the card that you need, the lesson that you need to be looking at, and what you need to be thinking about, and then you journal from that. Maximum tops 5 minutes. That's it.
Yeah. So keep watching my social media, because I think there could be some stuff to share on this. Thanks, Amber. So certainly for me, everything that you've talked about and what you do is something I'm sure I will hopefully explore further at some point when the time is right for me to do this. Brilliant. Because I think it's a really valuable piece of your overall health and well-being puzzle. It's very important. Eat the right foods to move your body, to manage stress. We know all of those things are fundamental to solid foundations of good health, but also so is your emotional, spiritual health, because that very much impacts how your machine, the body, is running, in the background. So Absolutely. Fantastic. I'll share everything to connect with Amber, but if you just want to let everyone know where the best place is to reach out, and I think you have a little something that people can opt in as well to find out more about this.
I do. So best place to go is my website, so amberharrison.co.uk. Everything's on there about the package that I offer, the one-to-one healing packages. But also on there's 2 freebies. So one is a Rest and Revitalize audio, so a guided meditation that you can listen to. And then the other one is a little ebook that I've created, so called New to Woo. And it's a beginner's guide to building a spiritual toolkit for yourselves. So there's those 2 on there as well. But that's the best place to go, amberharrison.co.uk. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. And I absolutely encourage the audio download as well, to try out a short meditation, because that is so beneficial as well for so much of your overall health and well-being. So thank you, Amber. I've loved the conversation, and really am delighted for people to be able to find out more about this. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola. It's been my honour. I'm very grateful for the time. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for joining today. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please remember to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. It would be massively appreciated if you could leave a rating and review to help other women discover the podcast and build their own healthy, happy life. If you're struggling with the changes perimenopause is bringing your way and you're ready to reclaim your vitality, to embrace this new chapter of your life with confidence and joy, then why not download our free guide, 10 Ways to Feel Good Again, your perimenopausal revival guide. Inside, you'll get 10 proven ways to enhance your well-being and rediscover the joy of living life to the fullest. And we all want to live a great life, don't we? So download your free guide now at lifenowcoaching.uk/feel good again. The link is in the show notes. You can follow Life Now Coaching on Instagram and LinkedIn and visit our website at lifenow.uk. All of the links are in the show description. I really hope you've enjoyed today's topic and conversation and can't wait to have you back again next week for more tips on living healthy and happy right now. Take care.